While you are getting ready, I do, for the people who maybe don't know you, want to give a little bit of information about Sean, our speaker. Even though many people who come to Writers Lunch know him very well because he is the co-host every week, except when he's on vacation. And he's a board member of Houston Independent Authors. But he's got a background as a bookseller, photography teacher, excuse me, butcher, cartoonist, waiter, art critic, crepe maker, vintage fashion grader, and sign painter. He's been published in Art of America, artforum.com, Houston Press, Free Press Houston, Nebo Literary Journal, and Gulf Coast Magazine. He's received an honors degree in art history from the University of Houston, and you can find him at his blog at realityaheadofschedule.wordpress.com. So without further ado, Sean Morrissey Carroll, please teach us all about haiku and emotive description.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I had kind of prefaced, nice and easy, I really want to examine this as an idea of reevaluating what Americans or English speakers think of haiku, as well as how you can use it in other forms of writing. It's a lovely exercise to do yourself as well, absolutely. But most of the time you think of haikus as a certain amount of syllables, and they are jokes. And I have a t-shirt that says this, so that was very nice to find this image online. Just funny, but it's very shallow, and so that's kind of the American image of it. The middle school definition is a 575 syllable 3-line poem that needs a season word. And that's why so many are about nature. Now, of course, in the original Japanese, a lot of them were about nature as well, but we'll see some examples of them where that season word can actually be seen as a different term that doesn't have to do with nature. Our new definition is a short poem with a cutting word. A syllable count doesn't matter, and it contains a synecdoche. Now, a synecdoche is a season word, but it is basically a single word that encompasses a whole, and it is a part that represents the whole. And I think snowflake is a great word for that because it can be used as a seasonal word, and these days it is a political word. But that one single word represents a body of people or a body of experiences that is a whole. It doesn't have to be a single word as well. And I love the examples in the second part here where it says in rhetoric, the trope by which the whole of a thing is put in for a part or a part as a whole. So a fleet of 10 sail makes absolute sense if you're reading it for a fleet of 10 ships. It is much more poetic to put it that way, but it makes sense to hear that as meaning ships. You are not just having sails going out. There was a great movie 10, 15 years back, Philip Seymour Hoffman, called Synecdoche, New York. And in it, he builds a tiny world of New York City in a warehouse. And this part represents the whole. It's his way of kind of controlling this massive city. But the first picture on the right is his tiny construction of it. But as his delusions go on, and you don't know if they're real or not, he literally starts hiring actors to play everyday people in daily life in New York. So his part takes on all of the existence of the real thing. And if you ever have a chance to watch it, it's slow, but it's a very good movie. And Philip Seymour Hoffman, always good stuff to find. The origin of haiku starts with a renga, and it's an example of a renga by, I believe, Bartow at the bottom there, and I'm pronouncing his name terribly, but it's a larger poem. And you can see in this image down here, the haku, the opening line to a renga, which is the first one on the left side and slightly separate from it. I'm not going to worry about the translation or reading this particular poem, but I do like how you can see visually just how it is slightly separate and one single line. In the original term, it was used in the early 20th century, a single vertical line of 17 syllables, But what constitutes a syllable in Japanese is very different from English, and Japanese vocal patterns typically fall into 5 or 7 syllable sound bites. So English speakers took this as a direct translation. You must have a certain number of syllables, but for Japanese, that was just normal speech. So really, it is a single vertical line of normal speech. So it does not have to be 7 syllables, but in the 50s and the 60s, it was used extensively in American schooling in elementary and middle school in order to teach children about syllables. And so this very strict definition grew to be our definition of what a haiku is, even though it was a simplified and mistranslated version used for children. There are many examples of English speakers writing haiku, not adhering to that, and making some beautiful work, absolutely. This is another visual representation, and versus that last one of the hako, you can see how there's 1, 2, 3 lines. Quietly, quietly, yellow mountain, roses fall, sound of the rapids. And the rapids and the drawing definitely give you an all-encompassing scene. It's a picture with a short poem, but you don't need the picture. But I do want to bring this up because in the original, there's a lot of times when they were presented like this as a counterpoint to an image, and there's a 21st century variant in popular culture that is absolutely a throwback or a relationship to this original way of looking at a haiku. Synecdoche and memes. Now this is 3 lines. It is a bit at the bottom that is a quote out of a movie that is a representation of the entire film. And this is where meme culture and the last one really come together, to where it is 3 lines, it is an image, and it gives you an entire scene of what happens. It's not even directly related to the image from the movie. This is grandma tells you what an attractive young man you'll grow up to be. That's the scene that you should be, that you can see in your mind's eye based on that. The first haiku in English, and there were some by visitors to Japan earlier, but this is the first one that, let's say, was published or first recognized one that actually came out, wasn't just in somebody's notebook. In a station of the metro, the apparition of the faces in the crowd, petals on a wet black bow. And I would say to that bow is the season word, and that's where you get kind of the synecdoche, that's where you get the season word. But if you take away from the earlier way of saying that it doesn't have to be a season word, that it just has to be a synecdoche, a representation of the whole. This is Paris. This is absolutely Paris, and you have those beautiful signs straight over all the entrances to the underground, to the subway, to the metro. And that word metro can conjure up a huge amount of images of Paris in the spring, and wet and cold and a very crowded scene. So you can take it as a season word in terms of bow, but it's not as strong as metro in that case, absolutely. Traditional emphasis. These are different examples, and we'll go through them. And using the shape of the page, using white space, physical paper, and movement. Now this can, of course, be done on computers, and we'll see it that way, and that relates to the memes as well. But the physical space and the movement of where the words are placed on the page. Love, sex, and death are great ways to think of season words that don't have anything to do with seasonality. This is a synecdoche. This is a single bit that represents an entire relationship, an entire life. A single line. Many times it is just a single line across the page. It does not have to be something that is in 3 stanzas in 3 sections. And a very powerful non-season synecdoche. We'll see some examples of that. So in a single line, Long viewed is serious. Even the past isn't the past. And these are different ones by different authors, but I did section them out to look at some of the best ways to do this. I don't want to read them all to you, absolutely, because if you take time and separate them, you can find what the cutting word is, and you can find what the season word is. Clouds in a mare's eye, the fracture beyond repair. The clouds is the season word. The fracture is the cutting words. Could be an absolutely normal everyday scene of cloud. You know, you're looking at a horse, you love this horse, absolutely. But that fracture and knowing what that means in terms of humans and horses is extremely strong. Leaves blowing into a sentence. Yes, it's got a season word, but the synecdoche takes it completely out of thinking about it as a nature scene, you know. Pig and I spring rain. Absolutely one of the shortest and sweetest, nothing to do with 7 syllables, 5 syllables, 7 syllables. Pig and I spring rain. Spring is your season word. Pig and I is your synecdoche. It's that personal relationship with an animal that you had possibly when you were a child. But it's a farm scene. It brings up a huge amount of emotion just based on that. And that's a lovely example of a synecdoche that is not a single word. But these are lovely ways to think about how could you look at your prose, your longer work, and really use very punchy, formative language and allusion to get something across without using adjectives and adverbs. Using the shape of the page. The eye is great. The eye of the fish is absolutely there. The bird is jumping. Moving through the critique. This is, you are absolutely, you know, like writing something, having something reviewed or in school, and a window is open and it makes everything easier. Or is this not a season word? And this is, you're moving through the critique and your sense of goodness becomes a breeze. There are many different examples of how this is a haiku can be something that can be interpreted differently by different people based on their own personal context, for sure. The sun lights up a distant ridge. Another. And you can see it, you know, to me, it's a Big Bend State Park and in the early morning. But it could be anywhere, and that is different places where people are. But I do love that this uses white space. You can't use that as much in prose, but as a whole, you can see where dialogue or spacing can be very important, and you can use more experimental methods towards your prose work. Now, love, sex, and death. And there was a whole book of love haikus, and I had taken it out, and then I needed to go back and reference something again. And it was very funny to have a librarian, when I couldn't find it on the shelf, yell to the back, you know, do we have that book about love haikus? And all the librarians were laughing at me. Umbrella sharing. The one more in love gets wet. I may have definitely done this years ago, but the images of Trump with Melania and him holding an umbrella over himself and his wife is standing there is so jarring, because the pushing over of the umbrella and letting rain fall on part of you is just very much a relationship thing, you know. Why? As she sips her coffee, eyes brimming. Why is absolutely a cutting word. Brimming is a synecdoche. It really means that emotions are about to explode, but in the immediate, you know, there is just tears about to flow. And it's an extremely powerful image of just looking at that. And that's something that could be translated into prose extremely easily, just with quotation marks and spacing and all that. A petal falls, you, across the table. Absolutely, that is a lot more explicit than it might look like from the words in there. It is using a small thing and making it, you know, like extremely strong. And this is the power of a synecdoche when you're using writing. It is not restricted to a season word. Body bag, not asking, not telling. Now, a powerful cutting word, and really jump down to the bottom, read the last one, because that is a single powerful cutting word that is amazing. But I'm going to start at the top, where my thumbprint on this 1,000-year-old pot fits hers. Don't know who hers is, but hers is absolutely a synecdoche of an entire culture that is removed through the slats of the outhorse door. Everest! The moment of, you know, like the excitement of Everest completely takes you out of the everyday activity. I mean, he is, or she is, in an outhouse, absolutely. Back from the war, all his doors swollen shut. Allegory, allusion, and metaphor all wrapped into one, absolutely. A party where everyone says goodbye, then stays. You may have been through that situation. I love that situation. Y'all mean to, you have an intent to, and it just doesn't happen. Winding road for the next 8 miles. Coal train. It's on the road. You're reading. You're driving. You're doing anything. And that word coal train just smacks it. That is a cutting word that has absolutely nothing to do with seasonality, or versus the last examples, love, sex, and death. It carries a very strong cultural connotation, and I would say especially for Americans. I might be wrong on that, absolutely. 21st century haiku, these are different examples of it, and I'll go through some, but also just some ideas, you know? So found haiku, you can find it in your text messages. You can find it in advertisements, in Twitter, absolutely. Meme haiku, and I'll show some examples of how the relationships between them are extremely strong. Mixed language. I love this idea of you're able to hear things, you're able to understand it, but cultural context can put a lot of things into it, and us as an American society today are either understanding or just confronting other languages than English very often. And that can be an extremely strong synecdoche to use a word in another language. Computer language. I haven't seen this yet, but I would love to see a understandable to the everyday person haiku in a computer language. I bet you it's out there. Text message haiku, and these are a couple that I found. Phone on the charger, nearly dead. And the going back and forth. Hey, talk to you later. This is using the white space on the page, you know. Do you want to go? Okay, is all the way over here. Is that an answer? There's nothing to do with 575. There's nothing to do with a season word, but it is about a synecdoche. It is about finding a word in there that wraps an entire situation or an entire, you know, lifetime, organization, whatever, into a single word or small phrase, absolutely. Meme haikus. A breeze, Houstonians. Is this fall? And this uses that white space as well, absolutely. Oh, the formatting on my bottom one got all messed up. Pre-Malone, post-Malone, watermelon, home Malone. Online best friend, parents. Is this a criminal? And there are examples that you might not think of as really poetry when you see them like this, but it's using a white space, it's using integration with an image that is something that you're familiar with. When we go back to the one earlier with the water falling, that was something that people contemporaneously would probably know. It would probably have been a waterfall near the city where that was made. And these are of an anime that nobody even watched, but a single scene from that became so integrated into contemporary culture by bouncing around these 3-line jokes that it has taken on a life of its own and becomes, you know, a synecdoche to relate to. These are 2-liners, but the third line, the visual third line, is that the gun goes off, and that's a visual one, but it's always assumed, you know. But these spaceman memes have been going around for the past couple of months, and they're hilarious. And these are 2 of the least lewd ones that I found, absolutely, or at least jargony, because there are a ton of them that are absolutely dragged into geographical or cultural things that that are extremely individual. I don't know how many I saw about Ohio. That was strange. Twitter, and these are just a couple that I just dragged up. And is it a haiku? Is it just extremely compact language? I just need 8 to 12 hours of alone time in the mornings, and then I'm recharged and ready to tackle the day. Ready to tackle the day feels like a synecdoche to me. It is a phrase more than a single word, but ready to tackle the day is this, you know, a really go-getter attitude that we have been taught in school and is absolutely a known thing, and it bounces off the rest of it. Just settled a divorce over visitation of a parrot. Neither may teach it negative phrases about the other. I went to law school for this. It's short, it's sweet. Is it a haiku? I am not sure, but I do love that there is a cutting phrase to it. I went to law school for this. That is, I utterly reflects back on the absurd situation before. Now, a hayuban is another way to think about how to use a haiku in prose or with prose. Is a haiku accompanying prose? And this one is playing with language a lot, so I don't want to read it out loud. But if you have a chance to read it, this is by Jim Cassian, titled No Thing. And he plays with language so much in it. Words misspelled, words mispronounced. You can tell there's something wrong with the speaker. And oftentimes these were used as travel travel writings, short travel writings in Japanese culture. They've turned around after that and been used for a lot of other things, just as kind of the setting of a scene that then brings the haiku to greater focus. Same as yesterday, a story to keep myself company. And it feels like he's having trouble speaking. He might have Alzheimer's. He might have had a stroke. It might be drunkenness, but there is some relation between the straightness of the haiku and the very muddled language of the hayuban. Haiku in prose. Writing haiku can help you bring brevity and punch to your prose. Learning effective synecdoche can cut down on adjectives and adverbs, and there are many editors who are going to try and chop your adjectives and adverbs as much as possible. So using synecdoche and very powerful nouns can absolutely be a way to help that process along without feeling like you're losing meaning. Dialogue can definitely benefit from haiku, implication over description, and that's kind of where the meme way goes into it. And thematic accompaniment, juxtaposition, or grace notes are a big part of both hayubans and haikus. And a good way to think about when you're trying to use very compact language to mean something greater, this is what you're trying to do. You're trying to, with emotional components, you know, present a thematic accompaniment to description or to dialogue. You're trying to have a juxtaposition. And I go back to those Twitter ones where the punchline is at the end, but the setup is ridiculous. The punchline is the straight guy or a grace note. And I think back to the one where it starts with, you know, why, drinking a cup of coffee, eyes brimming. And that could be part of a huge story, a short story, something that goes on before and goes on after. And that is just a central pop in it. But that's a grace note, you know, that really is something that can be beautiful and short and grab your reader's attention extremely effectively. Well, thank you guys for listening to me like an old man standing on a roadside in Japan back in the day. And I do hope that haikus are something useful that you can find in your own stuff, or it can be helpful to working on your own poetry and prose.
Have you written anything yourself that was influenced by what you've discovered about haiku?
Paige was just saying last night in that thing, short and sweet staccato writing, and I had kind of thought of it as the influence of really wanting to get a sense for Houston and reading Brian Washington's work and thinking of that. But this haiku focus, absolutely makes me feel like that is influencing my work, because I want to be short and staccato and use extremely powerful small words to represent a whole.
I think I may be getting sneak peeks into your soon to come up novel, and I would say you've done a really good job. Do you have any sort of things we as writers can do to kind of build this up? Any sort of workshopped kind of things that we can do? Also in the chat, we've got a couple of people who are already adding some questions and commentary that we should talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely would say that there's a recognition of it, and so reading haikus is definitely a good thing to kind of help you focus your language. Finding them yourself in your text messages, there are absolutely haikus in there from little bits of your own language with somebody else, and you can call that a collaboration. But that seems to be extremely effective in being able to find them and look at how a more broad definition, a 21st century definition of haikus can be helpful. And recognizing where synecdoches, which is really extremely the point of being able to write with haiku, can be important. So I would definitely say reading and writing your own will help your online presence, especially if you're on Twitter or something like that, as well as concentrating your own prose to recognize where you can shorten things and chop things up in order to move, your story along.
Well, I was going to say that's a very cool idea. I want to go to the comments that we've gotten so far. We've got a people who would like to share their haikus. I'd like to start with Paige. I think she was starting to talk about it, and then I'd like to move to Red. And if anybody else would like to write a haiku in our comments and share it, that would be awesome. Paige, are you available?
Yeah, I'm sorry. What did you want from me?
You'd like to share Sean's haiku, not our speaker Sean, but your husband Sean. Just to clarify, there's two different Seans we're talking about.
Do you still have
no,
it? Yeah.
So I was commenting as Sean was talking about it, saying that he had never seen a poem in a programming language.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, Sean wrote me one in C# when we were dating. But that
And
was
you
7
don't
years ago,
remember it?
and he sent it to me in a text message. Like, of course I don't remember. I texted him, so maybe he has it somewhere.
Oh,
If
cool.
he does send it to me, I'll definitely share it. But it was like,
Okay, sorry, I misread the
remember
comments. I thought you were saying you were going to share it, and it was Jan asking you to share it.
I would like to hear a haiku in C sharp. Yes, that would be fun.
it was not a haiku, it was a poem.
Oh, a poem. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
So
either way.
it was really sweet. So he calls himself a robot all the time, and it was like he was adding adding sub levels to his functioning for romance that like pertain directly to me.
Okay.
It was cute.
Add sub levels to function romance. Okay, I'm glad that's needed now. Okay. Great. Okay. Well, that's a fun fact though to hear about that. Thanks for sharing that.
Red, do you want to read yours since you've got a couple on there?
Well, I started out in just regular text, and then I said, I probably could change this and make it even somewhat sound like a haiku. And I thought I had erased all of it. Apparently I didn't. So I ended up with the bottom one, which I think is close. Wanted more, received, I should be easy. Wanted more, received it, overflowing. And since I don't know how to spell Schenectady as in New York, I guess it's fine. But it's a topic that I came across 40, 50 years ago in some books I was reading. And it's just always enamored me. The word itself, having been in Japan and stuff for a while, and it's part of that thing that I never knew about. And okay, fine, that sounds like a really neat topic. I'll have to really make sure I get here today. And I'm glad I did, because it was very educational. I thank you for that, Sean.
Heck yeah. And yeah, you lived in Japan back in the day. And this kind of, bringing haiku into the schools in the 50s was very much, in the same way that abstract expressionism was an exportation of American culture to the world to try and, demonstrate American exceptionalism, the accepting of haiku in schools and stuff like that. And like, this is a Japanese, poetry form or art form, was absolutely a way of trying to, demonstrate, Japanese are our friends and we are similar cultures, and to start that at a very early age, absolutely.
So I wrote one because of my frustration with Facebook and Zoom not talking, and I don't understand all of it. I'm not super duper techie, but my husband is talking about other places that are having issues with DNS communication. But it was the 575, so don't get too mad at me. But on our Facebook community, when I finally got us to be shared out 17 minutes late, I wrote, "Better late than never. Zoom and Facebook fought us hard. In the end, we won."
Yes. Well, it's the what is normal modes of speech, and so you can kind of see it in the evolution of rap music. Like the late 70s, early 80s had a certain cadence to it, and today trap has an extremely interesting spoken cadence. And so I'm not going to say that there's exactly a syllable connection, to trap music, but absolutely it is very natural speech, and then it goes into a rhythmic flow. So with this haiku, you can kind of think of it as this was 17th century Japanese speech as, as a contemporary rap. And that's why it sounds like 575 or 755 or whatever works was important to them, as far as putting it together. But when translated into another language, you do not have that. So if anybody knows French or Spanish or Tamara, I think Arabic, there are certain flows to different languages that bounce off of, I'm not going to say syllables, but bounce off a certain amount of lines that are different than English. And so without a knowledge of the original Japanese, I have no idea what the American equivalent would be, other than, yes, to say trap music really does that very well.
Bye, Red. Have a good day.
But yeah, does anybody have a moment to look in their texts and see really just very quickly if there is a haiku, in there, and especially the bouncing back and forth.
Oh my gosh, Sean found the message.
Yes.
So I don't know if it's going to be awesome like reading it out loud because it's a lot of punctuation and stuff, but I'll just leave out the punctuation. So it's like using Sean.vulnerability, using Sean.courtship, private class, Sean affection, while Sean is enthralled with Paige's captivating eyes, Sean.kiss lips, Sean.kiss tip of nose, Sean.kiss top of brow, Sean.kiss over heart. If Paige gives her beguiling grin and blush, Sean.swoon, else repeat.
Nice.
What a
That's
stud,
great.
man.
Yes, a programming language and able to be read by someone who doesn't know that, but that it would just integrate the whole thing. I love that. Well, if anybody else, I mean, really, is there anything in your text that bounces back and forth?
I'm looking. I don't think I'm all that fancy.
That's fine. Take your time. I love it.
Okay, all right. This may be it, but this is ridiculous. I have an issue with certain noises, mostly scraping. I can't handle it. Mouth noises, that kind of thing. And so I was complaining about my kiddo being very loud. I wrote bowel scraping. I mean, full scraping from his applesauce. Best typo ever.
Yes, where it's just short and sweet. You only have a certain amount of time to type that out, and so it ends up being just the important words, or like something like that. This is a business one, so it's just out of context. Yeah, closed about a week. I didn't recognize any of the people I saw. So weird, people would just set up tables and chairs in front of a business and watch TV.
Okay, I have something. I don't know if this quite fits, but there's every exhale I let something go. I saw a bat last night as big as a cat. And then, sometimes brushing them with my clothes or the hairs on my skin, but intentionally avoiding proper touch. You know how in conversations, like there'll be multiple threads going on at the same time?
Yes.
So that was a chunk of our conversation.
Where it's just like, I love that, and then another thing that happens in text is somebody else will send a new message before you respond to the last one. And so sometimes these juxtapositions, like bounce all over the place in subject. But like this form evolving, these are going to be cultural artifacts. Let's say it is Dr. Fauci's text messages from from his phone that he had through the year 2019 and 2020. Very well may be in the Library of Congress 40 years from now, and that's a completely different cultural artifact from a diary from 100 years ago, but it's got a lot to do with something like that. So you can see how these things over time, possibly might get elevated or changed or reinterpreted. And that's just how I feel that, and Paige's thing, with a poem written in computer language, is going to have to evolve and adapt to, the next phase of American culture.
Jan's got one, and then I found one that I kind of like that may make no sense without reference. But Jan, why don't you tell yours? It's in French. Jan? All right, I'll read mine, but then we'll go back to Jan's. Yeah, it's divorce court, made out of an abandoned restaurant, so they can fight over their fish in Latin.
Was that a text or was that did you write that?
No, that's a text about a
Yes.
divorce. An actual fish.
Exactly. Jan is muted, but I don't know if she wants to read her French.
Yeah, I want to try and read it. Can you guys hear me?
Oh, we can now. Yeah.
Okay, I seem to be having trouble with my internet, but I have found this from a French friend. Salut, comment ça va? Est-ce que tu as eu mon email? Bise. So that's hi, how are you? Did you get my email? Kisses.
Absolutely. Just like an everyday, thing like that can
Yeah.
become poetry, like if you think about it as a haiku, which just needs a cutting word, a synecdoche, absolutely.
That's good stuff. Sean, do you have any other things that people can do at home if they're, if they're kind of at a loss for inspiration and they just need something short to do? Is there any kind of website that they can go to get like a prompt to write haiku, or places that you think, aside from text messages, are good places to kind of look for the found haikus?
Well, I'm definitely going to say that memes are an incredible font of this stuff, and so there is Know Your Meme, KNOW, which just compiles all of these different memes and shows charts of when they were popular, but we'll just have huge examples of the different ways that these memes are used and remixed and changed. But so many of them depend on this 3 or 4 stanza. The other one that I thought of in terms of haiku as well is the son and the dad from the guy, the old man has a handlebar mustache. Somebody's gonna help me out with the name of the show, but it's like a pawn shop or a tow truck company that had a reality show 10 years ago, and now the son, the dad yelling at him, the son throwing a chair, and the dad yelling again is, this meme structure that is absolutely, like full of found haikus. And then from there, you can always just look for meme generators, which then are a place where you can create your own, jokes, 3 stanza bits about it, so that would be my push forward. If you're reading haikus, it is incredibly easy to start to fall into wanting to write little short things and make it snappy. And that's it. Is just, the best thing I can say is being exposed to it and being around it will naturally bring out the fact that these happen in your everyday life, or your observations about the world. And this is where Twitter comes in, is just type it onto there in under 180 characters. Junkyard Kings, I think you're right, Tamara, on where that meme is from. But yeah, so exposure to it, having it around, will create more, is the best way I can say it, if you have any desire for it.
I'm glad you caught that, because I saw that there were 2 lines under Tamara, and I was like, oh, she's writing a haiku. I'm just waiting for the 3rd line.
No, sorry, I just accidentally preemptively clicked enter when I did not mean to.
Very poetic, absolutely.
Fun stuff. Well, this was short and sweet, and that was kind of the point. So I want to open it up if anybody else has any questions, and then we'll talk about what we're doing next week. 1, 2, All right, so next week we're going to continue on with our craft series, I guess is what I'll call it, because we're kind of gearing up for NaNoWriMo season. And if you haven't participated in NaNoWriMo, that's National Novel Writing Month. It's when people all over the country essentially get together this year, not in person, over Zoom meetings and other digital, meeting applications. To write an entire novel in a month. And so it takes a lot of prep to write a novel that quickly. And you're allowed to do outlining, and you're allowed to brainstorm and everything besides put pen to paper and start the first chapter. So we're going to be doing a lot of stuff on craft, and also how to communicate effectively inside of online communities, as well as how to conduct yourself inside of these online, not in person, but kind of in person events like this, in order to foster and grow your own writing community around yourself, your writing, and then also to find mentors, find friends, people who can be resources or, be your cheerleaders, all that good stuff. So all that being said, next week we're going to be talking about your antagonist as a foil for your protagonist, and we're going to be using the my story can beat up your story method. So I'll be leading that one. But later on in the months, we're going to be doing, a whole bunch of stuff like what we just talked about, how to conduct yourself, et cetera, et cetera. So I hope to see you guys next time. If you aren't already following Houston Independent Authors on Facebook, you can find our page at Houston Authors. And you can find our group by just looking up Houston Independent Authors. We're also on YouTube, and I always forget to mention that. So if you don't prefer to talk to other people and would just like to look at our selection of older videos, you can find us at Houston Independent Authors on YouTube as well. Sean, why don't we talk a little bit more about where people can find you again, just in case they missed the beginning?
Oh, no, that's fine. Buffalo Sean on Twitter, and I look forward to the day when humans can hang out around a table over at Melange Creperie and have a coffee and talk. And in the meantime, I'm glad to see y'all on Zoom. I appreciate it.
Fantastic. Well, going once, going twice, if anybody has any other questions. No? Well, we will see you guys all next week. You guys stay safe out there. If you're going to be in public, stay 6 feet away from each other. Send your love from across the ether, but not with hugs. Bye-bye, everybody. See you next week.